Last week, Governor Polis signed a bill into law that introduces a new way for college athletes in Colorado to get paid for their name, image, and likeness. The law allows universities to pay students directly. Joining me this morning to discuss this is our 9 News legal expert, Whitney Traylor. Thanks for coming in.
Sure. Good morning. Good to be here.
This is kind of complicated.
It's very complicated. I might have to use my notes.
And that's totally fine. All right.
Okay.
So before we get into the bill, let's talk about how student athlete compensation has even evolved to this point.
Yeah, and that's a great starting place because it's relevant in terms of why Governor Polis signed this bill. So since 1906, student athletes couldn't be paid, and the idea was that they're amateurs. Well, as we know, college sports has morphed into this billion-dollar industry, and so now you have billions of dollars coming into the schools, the coaches being paid millions, and the student athletes not being able to be paid. But so you started to see litigation around this, and it really centered around three things: antitrust, and whether they should be employees, and their name, image, and likeness. And so recently in 2021, the Supreme Court ruled unanimously that the NCAA could not limit financial benefits that furthered their education, so they could get grad school, things like that. Then and they also said that name, image, and likeness could not be limited by the school. So that meant that the student could go out and promote themselves. They could go to a pizza shop and get endorsements and things like that. And that's really relevant because when you looked at, for example, a band member could have went in the summer and done a camp and actually been paid for that, but the student athlete couldn't. Somebody could go tutor and be paid, but the student athlete couldn't. So that was the case in 2021. Then in 2024, the appellate court ruled that student athletes could qualify as employees under the federal system. So that was in early 2024. Now, in later 2024, there were three significant cases, class action cases, in which they were looking to see, hey, can we get paid? And that's where the NCAA, the schools, and these athletes entered into a major settlement that hasn't been finalized, but we're expecting it to be finalized soon.
Yeah, so that's my next question. Currently, there is a pending settlement between the NCAA and a class of student athletes that will impact college sports going forward. You kind of understand the issue here because you've got these college athletes. The school's making so much money. The coaches are making so much money. They're required to practice all the time. They don't have time to go get a job. And so this is trying to help them out.
Yeah, exactly. And so this settlement was a 2.8. It hasn't been finalized. It received preliminary approval in October, and the judge is expected to rule on it April 7th, actually next week. And so what the settlement is $2.8 billion in back damages. So that means all these students that couldn't get NIL, couldn't get paid, it goes back from 2016 up till now. And so there's $2.8 billion, and you can go online and actually file a claim. So that was one component of it. And then going forward, it said that yes, you can get name, image, and likeness money, but it has to come through the school. And so what they're saying is, so now instead of it being an individual situation, each school can up to $21 million pay their athletes through their name, image, and likeness. So they enter into a licensing agreement and they can do that. Now, the downside of that settlement, if it's approved, which I think it will be, is that it limits the roster size. So that means now you're going to have less walk-on students. You're going to have less opportunities because they're going to be looking to the student athletes that they have, they're going to be paying them under that $21 million cap.
And this is above and beyond like free tuition, scholarships, that kind of stuff, right?
Yes, that's exactly right. And so it's the endorsements. So when they get on cereal, when they get on pictures, on T-shirts, things like that, and it's through the school. So the name, image, likeness, it won't be an individual contract between the student and the sponsor.
All right. So what happens now with Colorado, with our students here?
Right. So what happened as a result of this, or in anticipation of this settlement, we don't have federal legislation regarding any of this, which I think we ultimately need. So states started enacting their own name, image, and likeness rules. And a lot of states, in order to attract these students, were saying, for example, they don't have to pay income tax on it, or it's limited, the agency fee has to be limited to 5%. So different states are doing things to try and lure students, saying, hey, you can get paid, and here's some of these additional benefits. So Governor Polis, in anticipation of that, signed a law that said universities can pay athletes directly for their name, image, and likeness. It removes restrictions on endorsements with sponsors that may be in competition with university sponsors. And then third, it says it's not subject to the Colorado Open Records Act. So in other words, you can't find out exactly how much each athlete's paid. They can find out the aggregate number for each sport, but they can't find out the individual. And that was something that Governor Polis was really not happy about. He wants transparency, but the issue is if you know individually how much each athlete's being paid, then fans can harass them, sports bettors can approach them. So, but again, he's trying to make it attractive as possible, so that CU and other public institutions can attract these high-dollar athletes. Yeah, exactly right.
As always, Whitney, I'm glad you had your notes.
It's a mouthful.
Because it's a lot. It is a lot. Thank you so much for coming in.
Sure, good to be here.
Keely.
Yeah.